My name is Luca. I live on the second floor. Luca?
You back?
Again, such a rude American. Yeah, so my wife, and I'll get into that. It's shocking how little she is compared to me. And it's funny when I see pictures of us. She's 4'10". I'm 5'10", 5'11". But when I see pictures of us, and I look, and literally her head is 1/3 the size of mine, I think. And I'm just like, I look at these pictures and I go, how does she rule my world? It's because I love her. But, every once in a while I'm going, I could ball her up and throw her in the garbage if I wanted, like physically. But, so, I said, hey, I have that podcast in Germany. She's like, okay, but the measuring has to happen. I'm like, yes. Okay. So.
Yeah, she's making the rules,
Well, I waited my whole life for her, and she's my best friend, and that's all I ever wanted was a woman who could handle me, because I can be an intense person, makes me laugh. I have a friend who, and I hope this is good for the podcast, it's inspiring.
Fine.
Yeah. I had we'll get into when I met my wife, my now wife. But I always was a student of love, and I had friends that had long marriages, and my one friend would say, my wife is the funniest person ever. And I would think, his wife was funny. I found her funny, and she's a great personality, but the funniest person ever? No. Then when I realized is when I met my Jennifer, maiden name Brunner, German, she is the funniest person on earth to me. Because number one, she makes fun of me, and I think it's hilarious. She's witty and smart. That was going to be a prerequisite for the woman I found ultimately attractive and lovely. But she makes me laugh at myself. She doesn't allow me to take myself too seriously, which I think that happens with men. We get too wound up in getting things done, and we take ourselves too seriously. And the right woman can just knock you down. She can knock me down with a look, and she can absolutely she opened up my heart in a way that I never knew it needed opening up, and she's the master at that. And even when I met her, she had 2 little dogs, and I love them. And then when we lost them, ultimately I was brokenhearted. And then it was a year and a half later that I visited Pittsburgh for a month, and she was in Florida, and I came back to Florida, and she had a dog. She asked me, can we get another dog? And I said, let's talk about it. Was in my mind, it was no, but I said, let's talk about it when I get back. Can you hold off till I get back? She said, sure, yes. So I came home to this
the dog was fluffy, already sitting next to her. I bet.
Little fluffy, it's a Shih Tzu, little fluffy dog. So I actually brought my mother back, and that was the first time she visited our place here in Florida. So I brought my mother back from Pittsburgh, and 2 days into it, Jennifer's a teacher. 2 days into it, she came home from school, and I sat her down, and my mother was there, and I said, I mean this, the dog has to go back. I can't fall in love with this dog again. I can't fall in love with the dog. And they both looked at me and said, you're crazy, the dog is not going back. So I gathered my thoughts, and the next day, in the same manner, she came home. I sat her and my mother down, and I said, I'm putting my foot down about the dog. And they looked at me as if to say, oh, this ought to be good. And I said, he needs a brother. So we went and got another one. We went and got another
180-degree turn.
Yes. So they are best. Our dogs, we've had them 2 years. They're the best of friends. They go everywhere together. I have videos of them wrestling and fighting. They do like this mixed martial art type of fighting. Really, it looks like mixed martial arts. I have great video of it. And, a couple times a day, if I'm in my office here at home, or I'm doing dishes or walking around, I just pick them up and smile. They make me laugh. And Jennifer is the master of opening up my heart in ways I never thought possible. So she's the funniest person in the world. She's my best friend. She is my everything. And aside from my relationship with God, and it's because of my relationship with God that I understand how valuable she is to me and why she's so important.
How did you meet?
Actually, when I was a kid, after 5th grade, they were merging all these schools together, and it wasn't sure where we were going to be. And my sister and I had always been in the same school, and my parents had always toyed. We were Catholic, and they'd always toyed with the idea of putting us in a Catholic school. So they put us in a local Catholic school, and we did it for 2 years. And both my sister and I kind of sat our parents down and said, we want to go back to our school. So when I went back to school in 7th grade in the middle school, because I was a returning student, they didn't put me in homeroom by my last name. They stuck me in where they had a seat. So Jennifer Bruner and Joe Lafferty were in homeroom together in 7th grade. And that's when I first saw her and noticed her. And she was a little cheerleader, little bitty, tiny thing. I mean, she's 4'10" now. I don't even know how tall she was in 7th grade. I mean, she could have been 3 feet tall. I wouldn't, That's, by the way, no, that's the height of a Smurf, 3 apples tall. Jen might have been 3'5" at the time. I don't know. She was a little tiny bitty thing, 7th grade. She was a cheerleader. She was a cutie. I knew her. The school was so big, and we were all from so many different areas. You kind of stuck to your own people. Like I hung out with the guys I played football with, yeah, and I or played basketball or wrestled with. And she was from a different area. So then, but after she was there for 7th and 8th grade, we had some classes together. I knew who she was. She knew who I was. We know we had health class together again. Because we remember same memories, but I'm not sure we ever spoke. And then after 8th grade, I didn't see her again because I went off to a new high school. And a lot of people left my school district because they didn't want to be mixed in with the other the poorer school districts. So they left. And, a lot of people just left because different reasons. Well, I would still see her in the summertime, so I thought she just moved to another part of Pittsburgh. Here, after 8th grade, her father had already been gone for a year working in Florida as a carpenter. His brother had come down here and found work as a carpenter, and they were building homes on the Air Force Base, which is between where we are and the Atlantic Ocean. And we're just 4 miles from the ocean here in Florida. And she had moved here, but she would come back to Pittsburgh for a month every summer. And I feel like I saw her every summer. So fast forward to the year 2010, my 20th high school reunion, 6 months after my double organ transplant. I show up at my high school reunion. I run into one of my classmates, and she says, "Hey, do you remember Jen Bruner from Edgewood Middle School?" And my cool pickup line was, "Hey, you didn't graduate with us." I end up sitting with them on Friday night.
Well done.
I see. I went there. It was 6 months after my double organ transplant, and I talked to people. Jennifer and Amy were 2 of them, and they had lives. And I just said, I'm not married. I never had a relationship longer than 9 months with a girl. I didn't have kids. I'd never even asked a girl to marry me. It was never close. And I thought, it's time for me to go out and get a life. And so I sat around with these classmates, like I said, Jennifer included, and they told me about their lives. And everyone had the best life. And Jennifer was from living in Florida, and she'd been married, and she had 2 sons. And she was a teacher. Her husband worked in pool supplies. And it sounded like the coolest thing ever. She had the great life, as a lot of people kind of put out there on their Facebook. Little did I know that things were starting to go bad for Jennifer. It was a year and a half later. I got the call from one of my best friends from high school, and he said he got a call from that Amy girl who was still in Pittsburgh, and said, "Hey, Amy Monheim says Jennifer Bruner is coming up to celebrate her 40th birthday. We're going to do a little surprise birthday mini reunion thing. Are you in?" And I said, "Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm in. I'd love to see my classmates." It didn't even matter that it was Jen's 40th birthday, but I thought, hey, surprise parties are fun. So I went to the surprise party, and I saw her again. and she was thanking everyone. And I kind of went off to get some food and sat down. And she came to me last, and I got the opportunity to serve her food. And she made this comment like, no one serves me. And I'm like, well, you're a mom and a wife. Yeah, you know, not everyone serves you. She was like, no, you don't understand. I'm not a wife anymore. We're separated. We're getting divorced. So no one really waits on me. And she's adorable, and she has these beautiful green eyes. And something broke inside me, and I said, really? Tell me about what you're going through. And I started to listen, and I saw this strength in her. She wasn't happy. She was happy with her life. She loves her sons. She loved being a teacher, but something had broken in her marriage. She was living, I don't know if she'd moved. She was with her parents briefly and then moved into her own place. So I don't know if she was with her parents back then. I don't remember. But she had lived with her parents for a little while with her sons and then moved into her own place at some point. And she and I started to talk more and more and message on Facebook. And I got her phone number, and we started talking every night. And she had a cheap cell phone. So I put her, back then, the cell phone plan, if you had someone on the plan with you, you could talk to them unlimited. So I got her a phone and put it on my cell phone plan so she and I could talk unlimited amount of time. And that was, 8.5 years ago, almost 9 years ago. Well, she's 49, as am I now. So her birthday was 9 years ago, but when we started talking and really me pursuing her to date her was about 8.5 years ago, when I said, listen, I like you, and I know you're in Florida and I'm in Pittsburgh, but you make me feel like no one else ever has. And it had some challenges at the beginning, but we got through them, and I've been healthy, and we've gone through some tough times. Like I mentioned earlier, we lost her mom. Gail, love Gail. She's great. And, but it was about 6 years ago. I was here for most of the summer while she was, not teaching. And we were getting into bed, and we had the best day. And I started laughing to myself. And she said, what's so funny? And I said, I'm going to say something I've never said before. And your listeners and viewers already know that I'm kind of a goofy guy. So I say the silliest things to her, and she said, oh gosh, this is going to be something. And I said, no, I've never said this before. I love my life. And I'm getting choked up thinking about it, because I'd never had that thought. I never thought like, I love my life. I thought I had a pretty good life up till then, but I never said, I love this. I love what I'm doing. I love being with you. So, and it was a couple years ago that I was talking to someone, and they said, hey, how's Jen? How are things with Jen? And they're always great. Do we bicker? Every day we probably have something back and forth, a little one, but it gets resolved quickly because we both love each other. And someone said, how's Jen? And I said, how's Jen? Dude, I lay down to my best friend, lay down next to my best friend every night. My life is great. So I'm supremely blessed, and everything I went through, which, we haven't unpacked all that yet, everything that people find inspiring, I'd go back through again just to meet Jennifer again.
So sweet. Joe, that's one of the sweetest love stories I've ever heard.
Well, it's simple. It's really simple, and if you allow me to share this. For years, I'm a Christian, and I started seriously studying the Bible in the late 1999. A young man who's not much older than I am. He's older now, of course. Brent Porterfield. I consider him my spiritual father. And my nephew was born. I was made his godfather. And I said, I don't know much about God, and I'm not much of a man. I didn't think I was much of a man. But my friend Brent said, well, pardon me, if you let me, I'll teach you some things about the Bible and what God says to be a man is, and what God talks about love, and that's what you should learn. So I'd been Catholic my whole life. I started going to a different church, a non-denominational church, and I started studying the Bible every day. And one thing that I was drawn to immediately was the subject of love in the Bible. And one thing you can do when you study things in the Bible, whether it be love or faith or struggle or trials or any subject. You can go through the Bible and find everywhere it's mentioned. So I went through the Bible everywhere love was mentioned. And it's most famously mentioned in the book of Corinthians. And they read that a lot at weddings. Love is patient. Love is kind. And you're shaking your head. You know it. Yeah. Most people know it.
I know. Yeah.
TV shows. And so the odd thing about that chapter, because it doesn't get explained a lot in context. It sounds beautiful at a wedding, but the context of it doesn't often get explained, and in my opinion, doesn't get explained enough. So I'm going to explain it. The word love in the Greek, in Corinthians, that is talking about the word agape, A-G-A-P-E. Agape is specifically God's love for us and our love for him. That's not like eros, E-R-O-S, which is the romantic love between a man and a woman, or fidelius, which is brotherly love. This is a different word entirely. It's agape. And if you look around, there's a lot of agape churches and agape, because that's God's love for us. And that is the love that is perfect. And that is the love that it doesn't get prideful. And that's how God loves us and how we're supposed to love him. And what I think doesn't get put into the context is, actually, let me back up for a second. In the King James Version of the Bible, they don't use the word love. They use the word charity. And I think charity for agape is a better translation. Here's why. God's love for us can't be bought. You desperately need it. If you don't get it, you're going to die a spiritual death. Charity's like that. If you need charity, you can't afford it. You can't buy it. If you don't get it, you're going to die. You may die, and you can't do anything to earn it. So all you can do when someone is charitable to you is you can honor it and serve it. So that's all God wants from us, is to honor his love and serve him. Now, when you put that context into loving your spouse, this is how I love Jennifer. I couldn't buy her love. I didn't do anything in my life to earn the way she makes me feel and how she treats me. I wasn't a perfect person. I didn't do anything to earn it. I didn't do anything to earn this house that we share in Florida. I didn't do anything to earn, literally didn't do anything to earn the 2 stepsons that I have. I wasn't around when the times were tough and they were young, and I didn't do anything to earn all those things. They were given to me, and I don't deserve them. But what I will do and what I can do every day is honor them and serve them. So when you look at that, that's how you're supposed to treat your wife. It says in the Bible, women submit to your wives, submit to your husbands, and most women laugh at that. Like, I'm going to submit to him. But it says right there after that, because the husbands, give up yourselves the way Jesus gave up himself for the church. So Jesus completely sacrificed himself for the church and for us. And if a husband would just completely sacrifice his pride, his own agenda, all those things to serve and honor his wife, well, that's how ours works. And I can't imagine a woman who was treated with kindness and strength and honor wouldn't want to work in close partnership with her husband. So that's how it works for us. That's how I read it in the Bible. That's how I share it with people. So it's about me honoring the love that she gives me, not what I get in return or what I earned from her, because I don't deserve her. I don't deserve. Do we joke around? Sure. Do I do all I can for her? Sure. I don't deserve her, the love she gives me. I never did. But I honor it every day, and she feels the same way about me.
Wow. Joe, I mean, it makes the story even sweeter from my point of view. And also the point where a lot of people are trying to force finding their love, especially like young people in my age, where it's like, okay, you're going to be 30 in a while and you don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. So what's wrong with you? kind of. You get these vibes. And I think especially in my age group, a lot of people are trying to force finding love and get confused on the way and are together with someone who they are not really in love with. And your story is it's so hopeful, because I mean, you found each other when you were around about 40, and it sounds like it was worth every year waiting to have now your best friend lying beside you every day, every night in your bed, and that gives hope to many people, I guess.
And I don't want to demonize. I don't want to demonize. Oh gosh, of all the times. I have to stop again. God damn it. Give me a second.
That's fine. Yeah.
I'll explain in a second why this is annoying. We had a pool guy that came, and he's charged too much, so I started doing it myself. And then it turned green. And so I got this guy, and this guy, I said, this other guy was charging me so much. And he's like, well, I'll charge. He didn't know what the other guy charged me. And he said, I'll charge you this. And I said, I'll pay cash. And he said, I'll charge you this, which is lower. And then I said, what if I pay for the year? And he said, cash up front. I'm like, yep. He's like, I'll charge you this. And I was like, done. So it was 2 weeks in a row that I wasn't here when he came. So it's like, I'm like, no, I have the money. I'm trying to get... So...
No, I'm not broke. I swear.
Yes, I know. So last Wednesday, the money's right here on my desk. And I said, he texted me in the morning and said, my wife is sick. She had a heart incident. I won't be. So then he texted me, I said, we're praying for you. He said, we're taking a couple days off. So like, I even forgot today was Wednesday. I mean, the money's been there for 3 weeks. So like, I saw him and I was like, of course it's now when I'm talking to you that he shows up. So, all right. So I don't have to talk. I don't have to talk. Yeah. I don't have to talk to him for a year. But I see he's here. Yeah, he's here once a week. So
okay,
anyway.
so Joe, let's agree to something. The next podcast we are recording exactly in 1 year from now on the Wednesday in 1 year when your pool guy comes back.
You can leave all that in. It's so silly. I'm sorry, because we were going along so good, and I love talking about my love for Jennifer. So we can pick it up right there. So go ahead.
No, I mean I was just finished my sentence. I think you started off. You wanted to say something, and you were really emotional, I guess, because I said it gives hope to so many people out there to never lose hope to find their love eventually in their life if they just do good, and good will come back to you. I think. I like that sentence. I mean, I like the message you sent with this. Like, just do good and good will come back to you eventually.
All those years that I studied love in the Bible, and people can study love wherever they want. All those years I studied love in the Bible, I never prayed for someone. I didn't say, God, send me someone. I never prayed that. I prayed to God that I wanted to know that love existed. I prayed to him for him to show me that love existed, and I thought he was, because I mentioned, no, I didn't mention earlier. I'm sorry. I think when we were off camera, I mentioned it. You can't understand other people's love. Some people would see Jennifer and I together. If we had a camera set up, they'd be like, well, they kind of fight every day a little bit. And no, it's our back and forth. And other people, I have my sister and brother-in-law. Those are they're one of the most beautiful examples of love. They've been together 26 years. Next month, 26 years well they've been together. Well and and my sister's 50 and my brother-in-law is 55. Like, they're young. Yeah, they've been together a long time. And but I don't understand their love because I'm not either one of them. So you have to be part of it to fully understand it. Some you understand more than others. I understand how my sister and brother-in-law's love. I see how it's beautiful. but no one knows the inner workings except for them. And I've had other people in my life, Bill and Sandy Curry, who are beautiful examples of love as well, and I love them very much. But I couldn't be married to Sandy, and I wouldn't be married to Bill either, because their love is everyone's love is unique to them, and you need to find that person. By the way, a little side note: my grandparents were married when they were 36 and 35 years old, respectively, and that was in the early 1940s. So they were spinsters. My grandmother had taken care of her. My grandmother was a nurse, and she had taken care of a mother and a sickly sister her whole life. My grandfather was just probably too mean to get some woman to marry him. But they were married when they were 35 and 36 years old. They got pregnant right away. My dad's older brothers, they had my grandfather and grandmother had twins in February, and then had another twin boys in February, then had another son on Christmas Eve, all in the same year. Then they had a miscarriage, and then they had my father. So my grandparents had 4 boys in 4 years. So by the time my grandfather was 41 and my grandmother was 40, they had 4 sons under the age of 4. And and 3 of them in the same grade. So it was my grandmother was a full-time stay-at-home. My grandfather worked very hard. He worked 2 jobs. So my grandmother had help washing all those diapers when and she also had a woman that came and helped her cook. And I don't think it was a pay thing. I think they were just friends. She would come help her cook meals because she had 4 little boys. And it was, probably madness for her. But so late marriages, which I see that in some of my friends as well that I grew up with. You just find the one you're supposed to be with later in life. I don't want to demonize Jennifer's previous marriage. When she got married the first time, they were best friends, and they had sons, and as she's told me, she's like, I had a good life. But people grow apart and people change, and that's what happened. And not to get too deep into it, and they grew apart, and her ex-husband is off and happy, and Jennifer's off and happy, and that's good. Mm-hmm. For me, it was one and done. I won't be with anyone else for the rest of my life, and I don't want to be. And that's the way it is. But I did spend all that time alone, so I had a lot of autonomy and could do whatever I want. And when I went through my toughest medical times, I was alone, and people may think, "Oh my gosh, you were lonely," but I looked at it and didn't date anyone through all that time. I look at it as I didn't have to help anyone. I was able to focus all of my emotional fuel on getting through my toughest times. Nowadays, if I get sick or I don't feel well, I Jennifer takes care of me, but I know I'm also worrying her. So, my parents were worried for me. My sister was worried for me. My friends were worried for me. But it's different when you're married and you're worrying someone that, relies on you and you rely on them. And so I've been through my toughest times by myself, and it allowed me to focus on getting better and getting through those tough times, and trying to be inspirational and actually inspiring a lot of people around me, my family and my parents, my sister, my family, my friends, all kind of marvel at it, and it's very humbling to be inspirational. And there's also a great responsibility to carrying an inspirational story. And I don't know how many people talk about that on your podcast, but there is a great responsibility with carrying a testimony or a story like mine.
So far, I try to remember, but no, I don't think anyone said that it's a responsibility. Why do you think this is?
Well, I think because, if you see the original Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, you saw that one? So right before right before his uncle dies, this is when he's becoming Spider-Man, and he's realizing his power as Spider-Man. his Uncle Ben tells him, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's actually from the Bible. And the scripture in Luke 12.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Luke 12. Luke 12. And the scripture in the Bible is said differently, of course. But that line is directly based on a scripture. And the scripture is, to whom much is given, much is expected. So, okay. Yeah, it's kind of like if you're born into wealth, you should be generous with your wealth. If you are famous, if you're born into something and you get some fame, maybe don't treat fans who just want your autograph. Be kind, be gracious. And as far as in my lifetime, being a double organ transplant recipient like myself, I was gracious before someone saved my life, literally. But I've never met more gracious people in the world than people like me that have had their lives saved by an organ donor. And that's, you mentioned the book earlier, and that's the name of my book and a small part of my book, and it's the end of my book where the victories really come together. But when you're given great responsibilities and great blessings, I believe you have a duty to share them and to share them with honor in a way that inspires people and lets people know that they can do things too. Just because I went through my tough times the way I went through them, I don't discount anyone's tough time. I don't say, well, I went through something tougher than you, or I went through something tough. No, it's not. It's because everyone, I love my brother-in-law, and he's one of the strongest men I've ever met in my life in character and integrity. When the man sees a needle, he passes out.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know a more diligent father, husband, and worker I've ever met and known. He is an absolute workhorse. He's there every day for every person in his life. And I'm blessed to have him in my life because he takes care of my sister and my niece and nephew. I couldn't design a person better than him to take care of those people in my life who are important for me. But if he sees a needle or blood, he'll pass. He did pass out when they pulled out the needle when my sister was when she was having her first child. When they pulled out the epidural needle, he passed out and fell against the door. And I wasn't there. I was told about it. And I know some other people very close to me who have seen that needle at that moment and passed out. So my brother-in-law, I can take needles all day long and they don't bother me because I've had so many of them. But that's a specific strength. But my brother-in-law has different strength where he is absolutely kind and giving and does everything for everybody. He doesn't take anything personally. And that's a different kind of strength. And, we're all different. And, I keep mentioning the Bible, but in the Bible, it says, let the strong bear the infirmities of the weak. And from everything I've studied, and I think just look around the world, there aren't strong people and weak people. We have different strengths. We have different strengths and different weaknesses.
That's beautiful.
So, if we band together, like I said, on it, like a team, if we band together, then we help each other. Where I can throw together a resume for someone in 20 minutes on even though I can't even type, but I can throw together a resume for someone in 20 minutes on my computer. Maybe a little longer if I have to type it out. But if I'm given the information, I can whip together a resume in 20 minutes and reword some things and do some things. But that's because I've done it a bunch of times and all that makes sense to me. Messaging, baiting people with information on your resume, or you may call it your CV, your curriculum vitae. That's something I do easily. Another story, my father, I mentioned before, he was a Teamster in a union. They did circulation for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the local newspaper. And he was in this union and worked there for 36 years. He was an officer in that union. He was in leadership for most of his 36 years. They actually created a position for him. They created a position for him because he was doing one job and then they wanted him to do the next job up. And he said, let me show you how we should do that with one person. So they created this new position just for him. And after he left, they went back to doing it with 2 people. So my dad was a leader in this union for nearly 40 years. He had a retirement dinner, and I showed up with my brother-in-law, who's also in that who was in that union at the time. My brother-in-law was in that union, and my dad saw me show up, and he ushered me over. And remember, this was 2012, and I, in 2012, I had been speaking publicly since 1984. So do the math. I'm a public speaker. I know that. So I showed up, and my dad pulled me aside at his retirement dinner, and he said, "Okay, you're going to give my retirement speech." And I knew not to make a joke, because we joke around a lot. I knew not to make a joke. I knew that public speaking terrifies my father. I was a little astounded that he didn't feel comfortable talking to these guys that I had heard him yell at on occasion. And he asked me to do it. And I said, "Well, that's easy, Dad. Tell me what you want me to say. Just give me some bullet points. Tell me what you want me to say." And he gave me a couple, and he said, "But dress it up and tell it from your perspective." And I was so honored to speak for my father at his retirement dinner. And I think I did. He told me I did a good job, and I did him honor. I did honor to the union and the men he worked with. But, that's just, my dad worked somewhere. You heard my story. I didn't work anywhere more than 3 years, let alone 36 years.
Yeah, that's tough.
And that's the difference between people. So we can help each other. And that's how I helped my dad that day. After he helped me, as you read in the book, my father, the journey with my father is very unique. When you think your father is flawless as a child, and your mother is flawless, and they're perfect. Mm-hmm. And then you grow up and find out that mom and dad have flaws. And you realize at some point when you grow up that's okay that mom and dad aren't perfect. It's okay. Nobody's perfect. And they love you the best way they know how. And I know my mother and father, and now my stepmother, who's been in my life for 25 years. She loves me as much as she loves her 5 daughters that she brought to the marriage. She loves us, my sister and I, the same way she loves her daughters. So I have a big, beautiful, blended family, and we all help each other. And I think that's what all that means. We have to help each other through things, and that's the best way this world is ever going to do. And if we can stop identifying groups and just kind of come together, we can be a lot better.
I absolutely agree. Sorry, I absolutely agree with you, Joe. And I again, I like the sentence: "There are no weak and no strong people. There are only strong people, but with other strengths." I really like the sentence. It makes so much sense. It's almost like talking to a philosopher here, with you, Joe. But we are not coming around the bad sides or the dark sides in your life, I think. You already mentioned it a little bit, so let us unpack and unwrap a little bit about that.
Well, I can run through it, and then you can pick it apart. So when we last left our hero, he was a 13-year-old, or he was a college football player. He was a college football player, a type 1 diabetic. And, it's funny because my last year at college, I still wasn't starting. I was just playing special teams. And I walked up on, it was October. And I walked up on the field, and what happens at football practice, as you know, you're kind of milling around. Everything's about to get started, and everyone's kind of just waiting for the whistle to blow. So you start practice, right? Whether you start with a lap or you start with stretching or whatever. So that's what was going on. And I walked up there, and I went to put my helmet on, and I stared into my helmet, and the scoreboard across in my brain, the thought went through my head, God, I don't want to be here.
Oh.
And I realized I had played 4 years of contact football as a child, 4 years of full contact football in high school, and 4 years in college, and I had never had that thought ever. I'm one of the rare guys who I love to practice. I loved being so tired from conditioning. I loved it. It was hard, but I loved doing it. I thought it was the best thing ever. I just loved every minute of it. So when I had that thought, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be here, I turned around and walked back to the locker room and took off my pads and never put them on again. My coaches,
wow.
Yeah, I wasn't a star player, so it wasn't a big deal. But some of my coaches were like, you've come this far. Why would you quit now? And I'm like, I'm not in it. And when I finally told one of my coaches, he wasn't my coach, he was a defensive line coach, but he was the best mentor. And now to this day, he's a friend. When I told him, I said, I'm not good enough to do it halfway. I can't be on that field and not be 100% dialed into it. I'm not that good. I'm going to get myself hurt, or worse, I could hurt someone else by not being 100% in it. And some people can do that. They can go out there, they're so talented, they can go out into a practice and kind of halfway do it, and they don't hurt themselves and they don't hurt anyone else. That wasn't me. I wasn't good enough to do it halfway. I would have hurt myself or hurt someone else, and I didn't want to get hurt. And I didn't want to hurt anyone else for sure. They were my teammates. And so when I told him that, he said, okay, I understand. And, I walked away from it. I ended up getting into coaching. I'd already coached at that point, but I got into coaching. I loved every minute of football until I didn't, and I quit in that moment and was no longer a football player. Because I'm smart enough to know when I don't know anything. Sometimes. But yeah, so anyway, I gave up football and I started working, and I was working in Memphis for the university, and then I went out to Las Vegas to New Jersey, and I left New Jersey and went back to Florida where I was working, and then I got a significant job in Dallas, Texas, working for the Dallas Cowboys in 1999. And then in 2001, while still in Dallas, I was healthy through all that time. While helping a friend work on a house, I got a bad scratch on the side of my head. And being a diabetic, I didn't fight off the infection. And I got a staph infection, and it spread to my eye. And I woke up with an itchy eye, and it just get worse through the day. And I ended up in an optometrist's an ophthalmologist's office, lying on the floor in pain, and he looked in my eye and said, come on. And he literally drove me to the hospital, and I had a staph infection. They put antibiotics in my eye, and they told me, you have a couple days. The doctors told me, you have a couple days to decide if we can take your eye out, because if a staph infection goes to your brain, you're dead. And I said, I had already looked. I couldn't see out of my eye, and it looked like someone had stirred. Like the blue was like someone stirred my eye. Like the blue was bent, and I couldn't see anything. It felt like someone had shoved a golf ball in my orbital socket. And I said to the doctor, I need 10 minutes and then come back. And he said, what's in 10 minutes? I said, I'll give you my decision. And my friend had brought me my Bible, and I literally put the Bible on my face because I didn't know what to study. I didn't know what to pull up. So I literally laid it across my face and laid back, hoping some wisdom would, saturate my brain. And they came back in 10 minutes, and I gritted through my teeth, and I said, praise God and take my eye out. And they're like, what? I'm like, take out my eye. When can you do it? And they said, tomorrow morning. And I'm like, take it out. And then I started my life as a one-eyed person. And I moved back to Pittsburgh. And that was a good idea because things were about to get bad.
But did you regret it any time in the future because it could have gone like you could have gone away with it, but no one knows.
I don't think the vision would have ever come back. I don't think the vision would have ever come back. Could the swelling have gone down? Sure. It would have just been an eye then. But there was a chance that the infection could spread to my brain. And that's the ball, as they say, that's the ball game. You get a staph infection that goes to your brain. Every once in a while when I'm talking to a doctor, I used to say, what would you tell your younger brother to do? Now that I'm older, I'm like, what would you tell your father to do? So, I always lean on that kind of advice. Like, pretend you're me. What would you do? Well, I would do this. Okay, well, let's do that. You're the doctor. So, yeah, I mean, there's a small chance that my eye could have come back to look like my good eye. But I wouldn't have been able to see out of it anyway, which is, I don't know how good that is, but I didn't want to risk the staph infection, and I felt led to do that. So I moved back to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is a great medical community, and boy, did I need it. Within a couple of years, my blood pressure shot up, my cholesterol shot up, my organs started to fail. I had a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in your lungs, which can absolutely be deadly. And then my kid... Pardon me?
From where? Is this just happening? Bad
yes,
luck,
it was just... Well, it was just happening. What happened was my kidneys were failing, and so I got a blood clot. And then my kidneys started to fail, and I was getting evaluated for a kidney transplant. And they said they did a whole workup. It's months. It takes months to see all the doctors and all the things they have to do. And then they take you before the board of surgeons, and they say, okay, we can put you on the list now. Well, they saw something wrong with my heart, so they did more heart evaluation tests, and they found that I had 2 leaky heart valves. And when you gauge the leakiness of a valve, there's a scale of 1 to 16. Anything 8 and above, you have to replace. So my one valve was a 12, and my other valve was an 8. So I needed them both replaced. And if I didn't get them replaced, they wouldn't put me on the transplant list for the kidney and pancreas. So,
but you needed a replacement for your heart valves, like 2 of them.
Just the valves, and they can put in either pig valves or they can put in steel heart valves, and I opted for steel heart valves. Okay.
So that's a little bit easier to get than a new organ. Like you don't have to rely on someone.
They do valve replacements every day in America. They do heart transplants too, but my heart wasn't that bad at the time that I needed a heart transplant. I've learned I may ultimately need a heart transplant someday, but at that time I didn't need a heart transplant. In July of 2008, I went in to have the valve surgery done, and it was on a Friday. And I remember signing for the anesthesia. I remember the doctor before I went in. And then I woke up, and my father was sitting there. And I asked him why he was in what's called the recovery room. So after surgery, they take you to a room to wake up. And there's no people allowed in there. It's just doctors and nurses. So I asked my father immediately.
Patients.
Yeah, and waking patients, right. I said, what are you doing in the recovery room? And he said, Joe, this isn't the recovery room. Don't you want to know what day it was? Because I had been muttering, what day is it? What time is it? And I said, "What, Dad, it's Friday." And he said, "No, it's Thursday." I said, "No, Dad, my surgery, Friday, it's Friday." And he said, "No, Joe, it's Thursday. It's 6 days later." Come to find out that the surgery went well on Friday. I have no memory of what I'm about to tell you. I've only been told this. I remember Friday morning and waking up thinking I was in the recovery room, but I was actually in cardiac ICU. What happened was surgery went well on Friday. I woke up Friday night. I was fine. Saturday morning, I was okay. Sunday, I got out of bed. They cleaned the bed, changed my sheets. I got a sponge bath. Everything was great. Monday morning, the nurse came in, asked me what I wanted for breakfast. I told her. She walked down the hall, and I flatlined. which is dying. I flatlined. I was down for 7 minutes while they brought me back. They
7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Is this even? I mean, wow. I mean,